I guess congratulations on qualifying for the playoffs, Brian. But aside from that, what is the overall sort of feeling coming out of this one? Obviously, you picked up a couple injuries, you had a lead, but you also came back. I don't know.
Mixed emotions. I mean, you could probably spin this a ton of different ways. I mean, Vancouver may be the first place team in our division. Certainly the first half was disjointed with the 2 injuries. It just, it almost felt like the guys, when Alex went down and then Ymar went down, it almost feels like they were in shock for a little bit. They just, like, oh my God. It took us a while to get going. Second half, I thought it was okay, but then, look, the kids got to learn. The kids got to learn to give away. We're giving up too many soft goals. That's something I talked about. And then you get that response. So you're proud of the team to come back, and Jackson's header was excellent. Excellent header. Good ball. And then, I asked the guys in there, I said, it was a great second goal, but why? Ask yourself why it was such a great goal. Because it was with intent and they wanted to score, and you could just feel the momentum shift, and they were playing with confidence. And then I asked them, how could you continue that momentum instead of falling back again? And so those are some of the learning curves. And then, if we would have given up a second goal, I didn't know if I was going to, think that they would get a set-piece goal off a corner kick. I mean, Berhalter swings in a good ball for sure, but, we had size advantage a little bit. But there again, you could say that was a great goal by Laborda, same as I could say Jackson was a good goal. So, mixed bag. If you looked at the stats, the preliminary stats that I saw, I mean, the game was even. Statistically, shots, expected goals, possession, all that. So I left and ended it with, the intensity that Vancouver showed in that first half, us to get up and going, the second half being an entertaining game between 2 rivals, losing to the Cascadia Cup, the emotions and the intensity of that game was a good lead-up, in my opinion, coming off a kind of a bummer of a week. Although the result wasn't what we wanted, I think this is a good game to start trying to progress forward, because we need that intensity. We needed that type of game to kind of get us back going. And so hopefully that carries through to our other arch rival, and then RSL, and then New York City.
All right, Maz, over to you.
So, Brian, was it a challenge to the team, given you got three games left? And, I mean, you've talked about so many things right there that you've mentioned to us, closing out games, playing a full 90. So was there some sort of challenge, or each of the players taking ownership in moving this team forward for the next 3 games to get ready in the playoffs on some type of...
Not in there right now, because they're just listening to me tell them the same thing I'm telling you guys. They'll respond. I mean, there were some conversations as I was listening, I was waiting for the guys coming off the field. I'm listening to Christian kind of talk about, he didn't like some of the stuff that happened. He got beat up pretty good, and the intensity that they played with, and, some of the other guys, their body language, they're pretty determined. So, that's better for me. If they figure it out on their own, they learn, they talk amongst themselves, and they understand that that's what it's going to take, or that's what the MLS playoffs are all about, it's good for me.
All right, we'll come around this side of the room, go to Nico, and then George.
Thanks, Brian. Is there any early indication on either Alex or Yemar whether these are, long or gravity types of injuries?
No, we'll have to reassess them. They'll get MRIs on Monday, and we'll go from there.
And during the week, you felt like you were hoping to get Pedro de la Vega some minutes today. What was the reason that maybe that couldn't quite happen?
That's pretty easy. I had 2 subs in the first half. Changed the entire substitution patterns. I had planned on getting Pedro on the field. I had planned on getting Jordan more minutes. So.
All right, over to George.
Coach, I was wondering if you had any comment, because President Trump mentioned that he was going to take away the games from sanctuary cities, being a Seattle ambassador. If you had any comment on that.
I really shouldn't, because whatever he says, it's not all true. The fact of the matter is Seattle's a very safe city. The organizing committee has already done a great job of making sure that all the details that it's going to require for us to host a big tournament, those details are already being worked on. We've had a really good preview of that in the Club World Cup. I mean, you saw Paris Saint-Germain come. It's one of the biggest clubs in the world. Plenty of security.
We'll go to Diego here, front row.
Buenas. ¿Cree usted que la continuidad de partidos ha tenido algo que ver en esta especie de sobrecarga física que ha afectado los resultados y que hizo que hoy tuviéramos 2 lesionados empezando el partido?
Brian, do you believe that the series of games that we have been having has caused some type of overload or physical overload in the players, affecting the results of games like today, plus the amount of injuries that we had at the beginning?
Well, Alex was a kind of unusual injury. You know, the mechanism for that hip injury. Yaimar has played a lot of minutes, but there's other guys on the team that have played more minutes that haven't been injured. There's guys that have played less minutes that have gotten injured than Yaimar. So injuries are part of our sport. It's unfortunate that we, lost 2 players tonight. But as always, the strength of this team is the next man steps up, and we'll, move forward and do the same. The guys that came on the field tonight were good.
En realidad, la lesión de Yemar hoy día fue una lesión extraña, una lesión no común, y no marca realmente ninguna pauta. Sucede que hay veces que hay jugadores que juegan más minutos y no se lesionan, y hay jugadores que juegan menos minutos y sí se lesionan. Entonces no hay en realidad una regla con respecto a esto. En el club tenemos la política de que si un jugador falta, el siguiente jugador sale adelante y sale a cubrir esa posición. O sea que nosotros nos sentimos bien cubiertos en el partido de hoy y para los partidos que vienen.
All right, Nico Antune, we'll take your question, please, off Zoom.
Hey, Brian, to talk more about the playoffs, you've now made 9 out of the last 10. Ziggy made it a big part of the culture to make the playoffs. So when you took over after Ziggy, was there like a personal expectation to carry on his legacy and to make the playoffs consistently? And would you say, and how would you feel that his legacy affects the club today?
Well, Ziggy was a great coach, one of the greatest coaches in MLS. But I think the history of our club being competitive can go all the way back to the 70s and 80s. It lived throughout the 90s, a couple of championships there, the 2000s, 05 and 07. And it just kind of has been part of the DNA, the culture of, Seattle being a winning sports town. And, did I take that as, anything more than Ziggy being a strong coach and a strong character? No, because we all, myself, Brecky, Tommy, Andy, Freddie, we all want the best. The players in that locker room, they all understand it's America. The playoffs are important. I would say that I probably tweaked Ziggy's message just a little bit, that every single tournament we enter is important, and we give equal weight to winning trophies, whichever ones they are, including the Cascadia Cup tonight, because not a lot of people were talking about it. You know, maybe it was because we were, you know, last couple of years we haven't had good performances, but that's an important trophy for us. So that's for the fans. So all of those things matter, and I think it's in the DNA of the club.
All right, we'll come back in here. Go to Noah next.
Hey, Brian, back to the next man up mentality thing. Can you talk a little bit about Snyder Brunel stepping into that midfield role? And from what I saw, I thought he looked great tonight.
It was good. I mean, look, it was a rough half for everybody in the first half, but he made some plays. He was able to wiggle out of some things. It was a good learning curve for him, you know, especially, look, the goal, it's a good learning moment for him. He can just bounce it first time, you know, he's got to see as ball's played to him, he's got to know the guy's coming, so just bounce it back. We go out the other side. So it was a good start. I mean, we got high hopes for the kids. He's super talented.
Maz, you have a follow-up? Yeah. Mike's coming to you. Yeah.
Brian, Albert Rusnek, what has he provided since he's full health, and what did you see from him today, just in terms of both ends of the pitch?
Well, both ends of the pitch. Let me talk about the middle of the pitch. Leadership, you know, connecting some passes. You know, we dropped him back in at the end when we were playing with our 2 forward set next to Christian. You know, I loved what he said in the press the other day to you guys. I'll play wherever, you know, the team needs me. So tonight was a step forward for him to get 90 minutes under his belt and play with a lot of intensity, a lot of leadership.
All right, we'll give the last one here to Nico Moreno. And then we'll call it locker rooms open after this, guys. Go ahead, Nico.
Thanks, Coach. You finished there with a 4-4-2. Just wanted to get your take on how you felt like that played out, you know, playing both Danny and Osasa de Rosario there up top.
Not enough time to really look at it, but we are going to look at that in the future, you know, because it's necessity. I think we've got 3 super talented forwards. So when we're missing Obed, or if I want to go change the game, or if we go meet Minnesota in the playoffs, 2 forwards might come in handy against a back line of 5. So we're going to continue to dabble in that.
And considering, you know, maybe the frustrating results as of late, do you feel like this Portland game maybe could animate the team to get off of this kind of funk that's kind of happened over the last couple of games?
We have to win that game to make that happen. That's number one. But this game tonight, I think, again, the intensity metrics, it was super high. Okay, so that type of game is going to help prepare us for Portland, and we have to come back and, you know, have another good performance against our rival. And then RSL is not going to be a, you know, just a walk in the park, because we're missing a lot of guys for that game. So, you know, it's not easy, but I think the guys are, you know, based on that, they're in a good frame of mind.
That concludes tonight's post-match press conference. The locker room is open for player media access.